Hi, welcome to the Listen Up Girl podcast, your daily LGBTQ news podcast, keeping you informed, fired up, and proud all Pride Month long. I'm your host, Zach Randall-Friedman, and today is Friday, June the 12th, and we are 12 days into Pride, and the stories just keep coming in. Today's headlines include Idaho wants to DNA test you before you use the bathroom. I'm not making that up. Pete Buttigieg takes the biggest step yet towards a 2028 presidential run. The Cleveland Clinic caves to the DOJ and commits $2 million to detransition services, and trans advocates are calling it what it is, a farce. Queer businesses in Minneapolis become the backbone of resistance against the orange convicted felon. Brutal immigration raids. A pardoned January 6th insurrection is back in jail, this time for threatening a Black teenager. And Black Pride Week in Denver is bringing the house music, the ballroom, and the joy. So let's get into it. Starting in Idaho, DNA bathroom bill. So in Idaho, where a Republican lawyer said this quiet part very, very loud, Idaho passed Bill 752, a bathroom ban that makes it a crime for transgender people to use a bathroom that align with their gender identity. The first offense, a misdemeanor with up to a year in prison. Second offense, a felony carrying up to 5 years in prison. The law is set to take effect July 1st. The ACLU and Lambda Legal filed a lawsuit on behalf of 6 transgender Idahoans, and the case went before a federal judge. U.S. District Judge Amy Breas Ford pressed the state's attorneys on something pretty obvious. If trans people now carry an ID that matches their gender identity, how exactly do you plan to enforce this law? And this is where it gets distorted. Idaho Solicitor General Michael Zarin told the judge it shouldn't be too difficult because there is DNA testing. And he went on to suggest that trans people would not necessarily need to consent to such testing. So let that sink in. The state of Idaho is arguing that to prove your right to use a restroom, you would be subjected to a forced DNA test without consent. Lambda legal attorney Kel Olson, who is himself a trans man, pushed back immediately, noting that the DNA testing typically requires a warrant. After the hearing, ACLU of Idaho attorney Emily Croston said that the state still hadn't clearly laid out how the law would be enforced. Olson summed it up perfectly. If I go to a restaurant with my family and I want to just wash my hands for dinner, the law comes into play. We're going to keep our eyes on this as July 1st gets closer and the judge considers whether to block the law. Why do you care where a person is using the bathroom? They're just people. I don't understand this at all. I don't. It's insane to me. Leave transgender people alone. Let them live their lives. Anyway, I could go on for this for days, so let's get into our next story. Pete Buttigieg, 2028. From good news that we need right now, Pete Buttigieg is finally making moves. The out former U.S. Transportation Secretary is scheduled to be the Iowa Democratic Party's Liberty and Justice Dinner on July 12th, the state's largest annual event and the one that has historically drawn a big-name political figures testing the presidential waters. Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear headlined the 2024 version of this event, and we all know that he's been hinting at. This is not Pete's first hint. Back in April at the National Action Network convention in New York, Reverend Al Sharpton asked point blank, "Are you running for president again?" And Buttigieg says, "Save me a seat, I'll be there." The crowd went wild, and so did my heart, honestly. Pete is not officially in. He's not officially anything, but he's passed on both a Senate race and a gubernatorial bid in Michigan, specifically to keep this door open, and he's not going to Iowa to speak to Democrats in the first caucus state. We're watching history being made in slow motion, and I'm here for every single second of it. Next, Cleveland Clinic DOJ transition settlement. So now a story that is hit harder to sit with. The Cleveland Clinic, one of the most prestigious hospitals in the systems in the United States, has settled with the Department of Justice and committed $2 million to detransition services for a whopping demographic that barely exists. Here's the backstory. The DOJ launched a 2025 investigation into the Cleveland Clinic over allegations that it falsely billed for insurance for what called sex rejecting procedures on minors. As part of the settlement, the clinic also paid just over $300,000 and agreed to a 20-year commitment not to provide puberty blockers, hormones, surgical interventions, or other gender-affirming care for minors. Now, the clinic tried to downplay all this. They said, we are already provide detransition care and not much is changing. And it's true. All Ohio hospitals are already banned from providing gender-affirming care to minors under state law. But trans advocates are not buying the spin. Dara Atkinson, executive director of Trans Ohio, said the Cleveland Clinic has shown that maintaining medical integrity is no longer its priority. Detransition services were always part of the gender-affirming care, Atkins said. There continues to be no increased need, and it is bigoted, sad performative base for the clinic is choosing to promote. Advocates pointed out that 97% of trans youth don't regret transitioning even a decade later, that only 1% of trans teens ever detransition. This is a second major hospital to make this kind of deal with the current administration, following Texas Children's Hospital last month. The orange convicted felon is using insurance fraud allegations as a legal way to bully hospitals into abandoning trans patients, and it's working. So that's what we know. For this, every institution that caves normalizes cruelty. Every institution that holds the line saves lives. Next, queer businesses and Minneapolis ICE raids. So the next story is one that should have gotten more national attention because it's a remarkable example of what a community actually looks like in a crisis. When the orange convicted felon unleashed Operation Metro Surge on Minnesota, a federal immigration operation that ran from December 2025 through February of 2026, resulting in nearly 3,800 arrests and deaths, including 2 U.S. citizens. The queer community in Minneapolis didn't wait for anyone to save them. Queer businesses became crucial parts of communities' infrastructural support and resistance. Businesses like the Smitten Kitten, a queer sex shop in an uptown neighborhood, became hubs for organizing and mutual aid as federal immigration agents tore through Minneapolis neighborhoods. And at Knit and Bolt, a lo-fi queer-owned knitting store in northeast Minneapolis, staff practiced what they called craftism, knitting bears to tuck into grocery bags delivered to immigrants trapped at home during the surge. And one woman at the center of the Smitten Kitten's mutual aid effort, Ann Lehman, said it simply: the community couldn't wait for some imagined group that was going to come and save them because they're not coming. One of the people killed during the raids was Renee Good, a 37-year-old U.S. citizen and mother of 3, shot and killed by an ICE agent January 7th, 2026. Her death became a turning point. LGBTQ plus residents and advocates played a central role throughout the sustained resistance to our federal occupation of Minnesota. As one organizer put it, our communities are deeply intertwined. LGBTQ plus folks are immigrants, refugees, and asylum seekers, and we are deeply committed to supporting all of our neighbors. This is what Pride looks like in 2026, not just parades. Protection and community is showing up for community. Next, Jack Lang arrested. So a quick crime and justice check-in, because sometimes the universe does not offer a moment of accountability. Jack Lang, a Republican U.S. Senate candidate from Florida and pardoned January 6 rioter, is back in jail on a $1 million bond for allegedly making terrorist threats. What did he do? Lang was in Texas stirring up racial animus around the trial of Carmelo Anthony, a black teenager holding a White Lives Matter sign outside the courthouse. He's allegedly told that if people in North Texas jury didn't find Anthony guilty, he would take care of it himself. A jury did find Anthony guilty, but that didn't matter. Lang was arrested and charged with making terrorist threats as a felony. Lang, to no one's surprise, posted about his arrest on social media and framed it as a matriarch. This is the same man running for Senate in Florida. Let that be a reminder to vote in every single election at every single level. And then Black Pride in Colorado and Denver. So let's close today with some joy, because joy is resistance too. Denver's Black Pride Week is in full swing, and tonight is a big one. Friday, June 12th, brings the house is a black party dinner to Denver, a celebration of Frankie Knuckles, the godfather of house music. Black Pride Colorado organizers say the world feels so separated right now, and pride is being used to keep everyone together. They also know that there are more than 500 bills currently targeting queer people, and they need this celebration now more than ever. Tomorrow, June 13th, brings a full performance stage at X Bar with drag queens, drag kings, and queer performers. And on to Sunday, June 14th, there's a queer cookout that with special guest T.S. Madison. Oh, I love T.S. Madison. Black queer joy is not a side story. It is a center of everything. The ballroom, the house music, the cookout, the community. This is what we're fighting for. This is what they're afraid of. Happy day 12 of Pride Month to everyone celebrating in Denver and beyond. So this is your news for Friday, June 12th, day 12 of Pride Month. We've covered a lot today. Subscribe, follow, and leave a review if this show is adding something to your life. It means everything. I'll see you tomorrow with more LGBTQ plus news, and thanks for listening.